You wrote the SOP, it has bullet points, it might even have a Loom walkthrough attached. Still, nobody follows it. As IT department head, I saw this happen day in, day out. And every single time the root cause was the same. The SOP was written by an expert, for an expert, in a language only an expert could understand. That's not a documentation issue though, it's a structure issue really. Most SOPs are designed to be read, but a process is designed to be executed. There's a big difference here. So let's talk about a 4-layer framework that turns documentation into something anyone in your operation can actually execute, without you being in the room, by the way. In the last video, we started building the 6-step franchise operating system. It's a complete business system for scaling any solopreneur operation without turning it into complete chaos. Step 2 of that system is to extract the code, pulling your knowledge out of your head and into a format other people can use. Most solopreneurs just stop here. They write the document, they share the link, they consider the work done. But it's not done. Writing a process is like source code, and source code that nobody can execute is just a text file really. So we're trying to close this gap today. There are 4 reasons your SOPs usually fail, and none of them are about motivation or attitude. They're all structural. Reason 1 is missing triggers. Your SOP exists, but nobody knows when to activate it. A specific event needs to start a certain function. When a new customer signs the contract, this process starts. When a support ticket hits the inbox, this SOP runs. If the trigger isn't defined, the process can't start reliably. Reason 2 is assumed knowledge. Chances are it was you who wrote the SOP. You know what every step means because you've done it 500 times. The new person, the new hire following it, has not. Every step that comes with assumed context will be done incorrectly or it will be skipped. As experts, we always underestimate how much we're assuming. And reason 3 is missing validation checks. There is no output standard really. So your hired help completes the task, marks it as done, and moves on to the next thing. But done and done correctly are different things. If you can't define what correct output looks like, you cannot verify correct execution. It's like you're flying blind on quality control. And finally, reason 4 is what we can call read-only storage. The SOP is filed away somewhere. It gets looked at once or twice in the beginning and never updated again. While the actual process evolves over time, the document does not. So the gap between reality and documentation gets bigger and bigger over time, until they're completely detached from each other. Here's the part most business gurus won't say out loud. You don't need better SOPs. You need a better SOP system. The content and the quality of documentation is usually not the problem. The structure is. What I'm about to show you connects directly to those 4 failure points. 1 solution per layer, and we can call it the SOP stack. 4 layers and each one is non-negotiable. Remove one of them and the process falls apart. So layer 1 is the trigger or the solution for not having an activation point. We said that every SOP needs a defined event that starts it. That's not random. It has to be very specific, like a calendar event, a form submission, or a contract signature. Whatever it is, it's written into the SOP. So if someone has to decide first if they need to run the SOP, they won't. The trigger completely removes the decision. Layer 2 is about boundary conditions, and that's the solution to under-delivering results or delivering the wrong results. We need to define exactly what the SOP covers and what it doesn't. What decisions are pre-approved, what escalation looks like, where this process ends and where the next one begins. Without these conditions clarified, chances are really high that the other person either does too little or goes off script. Layer 3 are execution steps, which solve the assumed knowledge issue we talked about earlier. So this is where most people start and why they fail. Execution steps need to meet 3 standards. 1, every step starts with an action verb. Log the client name in the database, not client details have to be recorded. Passive voice kills execution. 2, zero assumed knowledge. If a step requires a tool, a login, a template, or a decision, That information must be part of the step every time. And 3 is numbered, not bulleted. Sequential steps are mandatory in a process. Bullet points imply optional. Numbers imply order. I know it's a small distinction, but it'll make a massive difference in output. Layer 4 is the validation check. And that one solves that quality control issue we talked about earlier. The validation check is the output definition. What does done actually look like? What proof do we have the SOP was executed correctly? So write it out. The client record is updated. The onboarding email is sent. The project workspace is live and the client has access to it. That's a validation check. If you can define it, you can verify it. If you can't define it, you can't manage it. Of those 4 layers, most solopreneurs are only focusing on layer 3. They write the steps, skip everything else, and then they wonder why nothing sticks. But the SOP only works when we complete all 4 layers. So let me show you how this looks like in practical terms. I'm building a client onboarding SOP using the 4 layers right now. Every solopreneur consultant has this process. Almost none have it documented correctly though. So that's the title right here, and next is layer 1, the trigger for the SOP. Let's keep it simple for now and just assume a client sends over the signed contract by email. No fancy automations just yet. The SOP gets triggered when an email comes in with the contract attached. Now we move to layer 2 and define the boundary conditions. First off, what does this SOP cover and what does it not cover? We can call those in scope and out of scope. In our case, the SOP includes verifying the client signature and archiving the contract. Anything else is out of scope. So sales process, proposal, pricing, negotiation, those are not part of the SOP. We can define pre-approved decisions, meaning the person working through that SOP is allowed to do things without knocking on my door and asking for my permission every single time. So let's say a pre-approved decision is that the client receives the standard onboarding package in return. Likewise, we can add an escalation trigger. Any custom deliverable request outside of contract terms flag to the CEO before proceeding. Layer 3 are the execution steps next. I won't read through all of them, just keep in mind that we have the steps numbered and not with bullet points, because this is a one step after the other process. And we want to make it detailed. So when the contract needs to be archived, we need to write down where, so it's clear to whoever runs the SOP knows where to put the document without asking us or me for clarification. And once we've mapped out the steps, we move on to layer 4, the validation checks. And this is our quality control process within the SOP. When all boxes are ticked in a real-life scenario, we know for sure the process is done, as in done properly without any question. With the 4-layer framework, we exclude any assumed knowledge. Literally anyone, no matter if they're a new hire or your mom, can run that process and get the same output every time. That's what a runnable, executable SOP looks like compared to one that reads well to an expert. If you're building this out and you want the full franchise OS series, definitely subscribe now. This is just one of the key operating systems for your business, and you want all of them. Now, videos on this are coming out every week. Either way, the shift I'm asking you to make is simple, but it changes everything. Stop treating SOPs like documentation. Documenting is passive. An SOP needs to be executed well. It has active triggers, it has boundary conditions, executable steps, and a validation checklist that tells you without guessing if the process ran correctly. When all 4 layers are in place, your operation runs the same way with or without you. That's what extract the code actually means. Not just writing it down, but making it executable. Because a business that only runs when you're there is not a system. It's a job with a lot of extra steps. Next week, we're looking at layer 3 of the franchise OS. Delegating the work correctly. And that's where we go from just documented SOP to an actual delegation process. The SOP stack, however, is the requirement for this. If you build yours today, you're ready. In case you haven't watched part 1 of the franchise OS, that's linked right here. Because this video is part 2 and part 1 is where the architecture of the system starts.